Hello crafty friends, it's Donna here from Donna is Playing Paper, and I have a set of 2 cards for you which use a tone on tone effect and some lovely bright colours. These cards are quite quick and easy to make and don't require any colouring. Let's get started, shall we? I'm using some Paper Rose card bases and also their matching card fronts so that I don't have to worry about cutting things to size. I'm going to start with 3 of the card fronts and ink them all up in the same way. I'll use 2 as my background panels and then I'll squeeze all my front elements into the other one. I'm starting with Abandoned Coral Distress Oxide ink and I'm using my ink blending tool. This tool with its little foam ends gives much thicker coverage and therefore darker colours. I could use the same colours and a blending brush, but I would get a much paler effect unless I was happy to spend hours building up the colour. Next up is Seedless Preserves ink. Once that's done, I'm going to move on to Faded Jeans. I'm switching out my foam for each colour family. I'll keep these when I'm done and use them for all of my pinks, all of my purples, and all of my darker blues. These are Distress Oxides, and so they're a little bit opaque. That means that here where I thought the purple had come down a little bit too far, I can go straight back over that with the Abandoned Coral and cover it up. I've repeated that process twice more, layering up the inks until I have 3 fairly similar panels. Now let's get on to the stamping. This stamp is called Sketchy Florals Thanks. I've used this stamp in a couple of previous videos and I'll link to those in the top corner. Stamping and die cutting an image that has a thin stem can be quite tricky because the stems on the stamp can move so easily, and if you stamp first and then try to die cut, you can end up with a stem that doesn't quite match, and there's nothing you can do about it with the die because those things don't move at all. Sometimes what I do to combat that is to die cut first and then stamp second onto my die cut pieces. This time around I'm doing something a little bit different, and that is I'm laying out all my dies onto my panel and then I'm adding the stamps on top, making sure that all of the small bendy bits are at the right angle for the dies. Once I have all of those in position, I can close the lid of my stamping tool, which will pick up the stamps, then I can remove my dies and get on with the stamping. Just before I stamp and heat emboss, I'm going to do a little check. It's been a couple of hours since I did the ink blending, but just in case it's not dry, I'm going to put my anti-static powder over the sheet and then just sprinkle over a little bit of my embossing powder to be sure that none of it sticks. And it doesn't, so we're good to go. A quick recovery here, as I realised I forgot to start filming. I've used Versamark ink and stamped those images up. Versamark is clear and sticky, and so it's going to stay wet for long enough for my embossing powder to stick to it all. I'm choosing a gold embossing powder from Wow today, but this would look lovely with white or silver or even black. Once my heat tool is nice and hot, then I'm going to bring it to the embossing powder. And let's all just take a moment to enjoy it melting while we listen to some of Darcy's music. Next, I'm going to go back to the dies and cut out my images, and we can get on with constructing the cards. The best thing about the dies is that the only scissor work I needed to do on that little centerpiece was to just give it a good poke. I still had a little bit of paper left around the edges, and so I decided to cut a sentiment and also a couple of the little bees. To do that, I used the die to cut some bee shapes from all around the paper. And then I put one of the negative spaces from that bee shape into my MISTI, positioned the stamp in the hole, and stamped it until I was happy that I had the stamp directly in the middle of that space. This took a lot of fiddling and a lot of re-stamping, but once I was happy that I had it central, then I started to insert my little bees into the hole, and then I could stamp them all in a bit of a production line, knowing that every time I put that mask back in the corner, it would be in exactly the right place. I used my tweezers to dip the bees directly into my embossing powder and heat set them. To construct the cards, I glued the backgrounds down flat with glue and then popped up all of the other elements with a gajillion teeny tiny pieces of foam tape so that none of the little corners would sag. The sentiment on this first card is the thanks that I cut from the same paper and the same stamp set. And for the second card, I've grabbed a pack which is new to me, these embossed cut-apart sheets. There's a beautiful shiny clear embossing over the different sentiments, which is really hard to pick up on photos, but you can both feel it and see it in real life. I'll leave you with some close-up photos of the cards. I hope that you're having a fabulous day, and I look forward to sharing some more cards with you soon. Bye for now.